Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us for Hop and Brew School 2021. We're excited to talk about hop water today. I think it's a good tool for every brewer to have. I'm Josh Wurzbacher. I'm the regional sales manager out of the Mid-Atlantic. I'm also a former brewer based in Philadelphia. And joining us is Joe Shanahan, the regional sales manager out of the Midwest, also a former brewer out of Chicago. And Paul Tecker, he's the CEO and co-founder of H2 Ops, based in Anaheim, California.
Welcome, everyone.
Thanks.
You go ahead and start the first slide for us. Thank you. We always like to start our presentations talking about our mission, vision, and values. Our mission is to connect family hop farms with the world's finest brewers and provide the highest quality hops. Our vision is to be a global supplier of choice, and our values are passion, respect, integrity, dedication, and excellence. Give me the next slide, please. We are also a 100% grower-owned company, and we also work with another additional 50 families throughout the Pacific Northwest. Paul, you want to get started with us here?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, my name's Paul Tecker. I'm the founder of H2OPS Hop Water. And first of all, I just want to, thank the Yakima Chief family. We've been a part of the Hop and Brew School as a guest and learning about, hops and beer and hopping techniques. And, it's been so valuable for us. And, we were there, and people ask, well, what do you guys do? And and say, well, we're brewing a hop water, and there's like, good luck with that, and it's so exciting to see how far this has really come, and to actually be invited to share some of the knowledge that we've acquired. So we're the category pioneer. We launched commercially in 2014. And it's been a real difficult road, to be honest, to commercialization, because, we've discovered that hop water is not beer. Really, it's a non-alcoholic product. And, there's a lot more to creating a shelf-stable product without alcohol. And, through a lot of trials and tribulations and dump batches and a lot of expertise from experts to help us along the way, we won Beverage Innovation of the Year Award from Beverage Industry Magazine in 2018. And as some of you know, we have followers from major breweries and other startups, working to build this hop water category. And our vision is that hop water is going to be served wherever craft beer is served. And we're here today, to really make sure that this category is going to thrive. We want you to be successful. And also just to talk about, safety and proper process for producers, and just, share that's really something that's critical. For the next slide, I think the question kind of comes up, why hop water? What is it? And, it can taste incredibly refreshing. And it's this new way to appreciate the amazing flavor of hops without alcohol or categories. It's just a way to appreciate, these amazing hops that the growers produce on more occasions and in different situations. And, we've kind of coined this phrase as a session extender, but a lot of our customers use hop water as a session extender. And, there's a statistic out there that over half of consumers, when drinking, they'll alternate back and forth between alcohol and non-alcoholic beverages. And, something that is hoppy is not such a shock to the system as compared to switching to water, right? And you can actually, we've experimented, and you can take a full strength IPA and cut it and blend it with our hop water and create kind of a session IPA out of it. So it's kind of that close, in terms of the composition. And hop water is different. It's just hops, right? There's no yeast, there's no malts in there. So it's completely different, to beer from my standpoint. It's just way more refreshing and clean, and you can really taste the hops. Another reason, for hop water is, it's a real profitable alternative in the tap room compared to free water. In a lot of sessions, people are at the end, and, do you want another? And, just give me a water. And if they can drink a hop water, think how happy they're going to be. And then think how much better it's going to be sort of for the economics for the server, and for the tap room or the restaurant itself. And hop water is, just unique to beer and brewery culture when you compare it to other non-alcoholic alternatives that you might offer. And, the obvious one is it's just, it's zero alcohol. So it's just great for the designated driver or those who, for medical reasons or for whatever reason, are limiting or abstaining from alcohol.
I'd also like to chime in too and suggest that if a brewery has a large cocktail focus or cocktail program, both NA and alcoholic, it's an ingredient behind their bar that they can use.
Yeah, that's cool. We've heard about, different recipes and, bartenders coming up with creative mixes and, yeah, that's a great point. I mean, for our product, I mean, we're brewing it just to be not really as a mixer strength, but just ready to drink, so it's a little bit subtle, but, certainly in the right kind of cocktail and the right kind of mix that, and, it depends on your hop water, maybe your hop water is, is different from ours. And that's really a great point.
Hey, Paul, we have a question in the Q&A. Somebody's asking, what is the typical shelf life of your hop water?
Yeah, we have a year on it, and that's something that took a long time to get to, right? You really have to be on your A game in terms of dissolved oxygen and your brewing process and your use of, pasteurization or, whatever it is, that you're doing. That's something that also is conditioned upon, how it's handled, right? So I think it's similar to craft beer in that, if you leave it outside in the sun and heat, that can really shorten and change the flavor of it. It'd be the same with us too. So this is making some assumptions like on how it's held, but we think we see it's very drinkable after a year.
I think that's great. A lot of craft beer I wouldn't drink past 30 to 90 days, but a year shelf life, that's incredible.
Yeah. And again, I think it changes a little bit, just like craft beer does. And, freshness is really, really important. We store our product refrigerated, but it is shelf stable. And, we want to make sure that our customers have that, the best experience with it as possible.
Give us our next slide, Nicole.
Okay. So, some of the industry trends, there's non-alcoholic beverages have been on this big run. And, even within non-alcoholic beverages, you have people switching from, traditional sodas to sparkling waters. And it's all about this sort of aura of health and wellness. And they're up 33% this year. And millennials, when it comes to alcohol consumption, 66%, they say they're making efforts to reduce, and it's not about being anti-alcohol. I think it's just kind of being smarter. And, you have things like dry January. If you look at the pie chart over here, that even in the United States, you have 15 to 20% of consumers who are drinkers participating in dry January. And, it's just sort of about health and wellness. If you look at AB InBev, who spend a lot of money on research and on consumers and trends, and they're forecasting that globally 20% of their sales will be non-alcoholic and by 2025. So, and then you have followers like Lagunitas Hoppy Refresher, which is another hop water out there, and they're growing incredibly as well. And so this really kind of speaks to these trends towards health and wellness. You see, even in the alcoholic space, you see people that are drinking hard seltzers. Whether that's healthier or not, I don't know. I think the perception is there because maybe it has some lower calories, but I think that, that it's really interesting, these consumer trends. And, if we can offer them something that is craft, and is hoppy, and really uses hops, we think that we can really capture these consumers that are looking for enjoying hops on more occasions, right? And leading perhaps a healthier lifestyle.
Yeah, not just dry January, but sober October. I mean, I think
Right.
after everybody spent the last year locked down, maybe drinking a little more heavily than they normally would have. Many of us are trying to, I know I'm a little dry right now, anticipating the harvest being some heavy drinking. So definitely
And
see the trends.
and I think there's a session as well you guys are having on the non-alcoholic craft beer movement as well. That's just, I think speaks so much to, kind of what we're seeing here in these trends that, our friends at Athletic Brewing Company, Sierra, Surreal, there's so many others that are doing really well, with hoppy craft beer that, really hasn't been a part of the mix until just the last few years.
It also speaks for the creativity of brewers to look outside beer and find new and kind of dynamic beverages out there, still, keeping to their roots of being craft. I think it is a pretty neat thing. This never existed, 20 years ago. This is a brand new line. And it's now slowly taking, same with seltzers, anything. So I do think speaks to the innovation of the brewers. So
I think a lot of craft brewery tap rooms now are, family venues where people come to eat food, not just drink beer. So having some
That's true.
non-alcoholic choices on the menu just gives you more dynamic options for everybody.
That's
Give us
right.
next slide.
Yeah.
So I think Joe and I were most excited about the Be Creative. We do have one question in the Q&A, and it says, I look forward to hearing about the process. Can you showcase a specific hop with hop water? And my answer to that is absolutely. I think single hop seltzers are a great idea, but this is a great opportunity to explore different combinations, or maybe use hops that you're not used to using, haven't had much experience, and don't want to necessarily use it in a beer just yet. Great opportunity to do some R&D. Some of the combinations that we just do together would be like Citra Mosaic being classic. If you want to do something a little more interesting with like Sabro and HBC 472, Equinaut Simcoe, I think, is a great combination. And then old school, Joe and I are brewers for a long time. I think old school hops, Centennial, Columbus, Cascade, those are some favorites. This is also a great opportunity to play around with other things. We are making hop water, but maybe you want to add a little bit of a backbone to it by adding some juice or puree or some botanicals. I think would go great with some hop combinations, or some types of caffeine-free black tea or matcha tea powder. I think these are all great combinations to use. What do you think, Joe?
And we'll touch on it soon too, but every ingredient that goes into this too, we'll just need to know, are you worried about calories? If you are, you may steer away from juice. You may want to lean towards an extract. There's nothing wrong with throwing those things in, making sure everything's sanitary as you're adding, because every ingredient you add adds another risk involved, no different than beer. But the bottom line is, get creative. I mean, this is a completely blank canvas to do whatever you want and kind of showcase things that would otherwise be maybe masked by malt and alcohol and yeast for that matter. So this is a completely bare bones canvas that you can have a lot of fun with, honestly.
Yeah. And on that R&D tip, you don't have to worry about wasting money on your malt. You don't have to worry about wasting a pitch of yeast. It's just a great opportunity to play around with new flavors. Give us the next slide. Another great alternative is CBD. Yakima Chief Hemp recently just partnered with Source Technologies. They created a water-soluble CBD product that is 100% cold side. It won't foul your lines, won't clean your tank. It has a very pleasant taste. I've had the privilege of getting to try a lot of it recently. And we think this is another great alternative. And if anybody has any questions about the Yakima Chief CBD, please reach out directly to us or our help desk, and we can get you some more information and send you out some samples.
And to piggyback too on that, CBD, we know that there's a lot of gray area with this in the beverage industry. This is the product you're going to want to experiment with. Alcohol might be a little bit more touchy, but if you're gonna experiment with CBD, hop waters and seltzers are definitely the way to look into.
And next slide, please.
So this is kind of the starting point to what we're about to get into, but I'm going to read you this quote from John Walker, who is the co-founder and head brewer of Athletic Brewing. They recently launched, I believe it's called Daypack hop seltzers. And this kind of is a great entryway into what Paul's about to talk about here soon. He states, venturing into the realm of seltzers and hop water is humbling to say the least. In addition to the added complexities and sensitivities you encounter when making a tasty, sparkling drink, there is an entire world of regulatory and food safety that needs to be mastered. Equal to, if not more than important, recipe formulation is learning, understanding, practicing a robust food safety and regulatory plan to ensure you are in compliance in the event of an audit. And also that your non-alcoholic beverage is in fact food safe. The ethanol crunch doesn't exist in the realm of food safety and is far more complex and worrisome than your typical brewing quality checks. And that kind of is a great segue into what Paul's about to talk about.
Yeah, I would just, echo, what John Walker is saying. A lot of respect for that. And we've experienced this and we're absolutely aligned with food safety. And, when I started brewing, I was a home brewer. That was my background. And, growing hops in my backyard, I was doing an IPA, and I decided to kind of switch to a sparkling water and just, started drinking that. And, doing it at home and then taking that process to commercialization is completely different. And, we can talk a little bit more about that, but, in things that, a process authority, would be involved with. And, this picture up on the right here, that hops are a food product. I was at the Hop and Brew School a couple of years ago, walking around, and I saw this on the wall, and I was just like, really resonated with me and the experience that we have had, that, hops are a food product. It's not beer. When you don't have alcohol, typically they're tunnel pasteurized, when you look at non-alcoholic beers, and teas and others have hot fill and, a whole host of different equipment and processes. But, it's not to say it can't be done. And we were so thankful to work with a process authority who is a consultant, an expert, who looks at, what you have as far as your equipment, your pH, is it low acid, is it high acid? And, how are you preserving it? Is it something that's going to go into a package and have a shelf life and be shelf stable? Or is it something that's refrigerated in a package? Or is it something that is just, maybe flash pasteurized and the lines are clean and the taps are clean and it's just refrigerated constantly for a couple of days at a tap room? Those are all very different scenarios. And, we're so excited about hop water. It's so refreshing, it's so amazing. And, the few people that have tasted it so far, are really excited about it. And the two things that keep me up at night are, number one, I guess, is the safety standpoint, right? Of others going out there and producing a hop water, and maybe it's not safe, right? Because they're not following these kind of the non-alcoholic beverage process authority type conventions. And then also, if they do it wrong and it doesn't taste good, and they say, this is not for me, and they don't try another one. We're so excited about this. Hops are just this amazing, complex, flavorful flower that has so much variety and complexity that we want people to experience this, and we want it to be done safely.
Yeah, I think the one takeaway that everybody watching this should take is that this is a food safety concern. You need to make sure that you have the utmost of brewing procedures. Everything's got to be sanitary. You need to be very careful because you do not have the ethanol crutch. So just, be safe and have good practices. One question in the chat, Paul, is, are you regulated by the FDA as a hop water manufacturer?
Yeah, I think that if you look kind of at this middle paragraph here, it's really the processor's responsibility to determine the status of their products, under the regulations, the FDA regulations and the CFRs. And so, yes, you're responsible for that. And, the way the document that you really need is something from a process authority, showing that you have an expert that has evaluated that, and we test every batch, for number one for gluten, because we're making a gluten-free claim, but, non-alcoholic beverages are typically, before they're released, sent out for mold, for bacteria, and yeast, just to kind of look at, what the counts are, and, to really look at your quality process that you have. And, that's pretty typical in the non-alcoholic beverage world, to have that where your product goes on QC hold before it's released and shipped out to customers. So, I think every processing facility, every brewery is going to be specific. And I would just, implore those that are interested in this to, do their due diligence and, get the assistance of a process authority or another expert. If they're
And
not,
document everything. Make sure your SOPs are buttoned up and really tight, so that in the case of an audit for any reason, you have documentation to showcase. No different than batches, keeping track of everything. So, should there be anything that goes wrong, you can trace it back and learn from it. But it's just good brewing practices,
Absolutely.
document and button up SOPs and constantly keep them updated.
Yeah, the QC and the micro should be at the top of the list when you're thinking about making these products. Another question, I think it's a great question. What would be the best way to ensure shelf stability of hop water if you don't have a way to pasteurize? I can take a stab at this. I would say,
sure.
If you have the ability to use a trap filter, 0.45 micron would give you a pharmaceutical quality filtration. That's something that I've used in my experience and got great results, especially after we checked it for micro afterwards. It can be really expensive to filter down that fine, but it is one option if you're not able to pasteurize.
Keep things cold. CO2 is your friend. O2 is your enemy. Make sure things are super well cleaned and sanitized throughout the process. I mean, every little bit. Sterilize your water, boil it. Some of these may seem basic and stuff, but I think those are all crucial, no different than beer. So keep tabs on it and make sure you're buttoned up. So
another question in the chat is, what are the advantages and disadvantages of using a little bit of brewer's yeast and hop water? I won't ask Paul that question because I know everything they do is proprietary, but I'll answer it in my experience. I think that brewer's yeast can be used in addition to dry hopping to help keep hops in suspension longer and help you extract the flavor and aroma and oils out of those hops quicker and more efficiently. What do you think, Joe?
yeah, that's kind of the idea behind it. I can't speak for how does it work, does it not work? Have you trialed back and forth? But I know that's definitely the idea behind it. I know some brewers have used dry yeast, some brewers have used wet. It's kind of your call, but yeah, bottom line is that's the theory behind it. So.
Oh, this is another great question. I was wondering if you could speak generally about the water component, such as chemistry and mineral content, et cetera. Paul, are you comfortable answering that?
I don't know if I have too much to add, but I think that the water chemistry makes a big difference in terms of flavor, and I think that that in the hop and brew schools, you guys have talked about the importance of water and how that translates into the sensory, right? It can make a big difference on how hops are I don't know if you want to say isomerized, but just how hops are infused into the water, right, can make a big difference. And it also makes a difference in pH. There's a lot of bottled water that are talking about their main, they're talking about pH. And for us, without going into any specifics, it's really all about the hops, and highlighting the flavor of the hops as opposed to the mineral content of the water. So we're a hop water. We're not advertising a particular pH, but
yeah, I would agree. I would say that if your water's good enough to brew beer, then it's good enough to make hop water.
Yeah, I think so too. But obviously, you've got to you got to treat the water probably as you do with brewing beer as well.
Joe and I are being very careful about speaking on process because I think a lot of brewers would be very interested to hear what we think is a good process for this. Again, there's very heavy FDA implications that you need to consider when making these products. But speaking on pH, if you're going to experiment with hop water in the brewery, I would say to make sure that your pH is at least 4.6, if not 4.4. And in terms of acidifying, I typically, in my experience, I would use either citric or lactic acid, or sometimes a combination of both.
Yeah, pH is important. I agree.
Yeah, one of the questions in the chat is, can citric acid be used to help preserve the water? And absolutely, just like we were saying, pH control is probably the most important thing to help you maintain good micro levels and make sure that you're not getting anything in there you don't want. So that's the end of our presentation. Does anybody else have any other questions? I mean, we're all here. We'd love to answer them. Or even if you just have some general hop questions, we can help you out.
And our contact information is right here. So if there is something you want to make more private, please reach out to Josh, myself, or Paul at any time. We'd be happy to answer in as much detail or as little detail as you'd like. So.
Paul, somebody in the chat asked what you're drinking.
I'm drinking our own product, drinking my own Kool-Aid, I guess you would say. This is our new mango variety, but my usual go-to is just our original. It is two ingredients, just hops and water, and that's really my favorite. And that's it. That's what I'm drinking.
Thumbs up.
Cheers to you guys, and I really appreciate the opportunity to share more about this category, and really thankful for all the knowledge that you guys have provided, Yakima Cheese has provided over the years, and it's been a lot of fun.
Another question we have in the chat is, when selecting hops, what are the specific attributes you're looking for? I think it's you would look at oil content. You want to make sure that you have a healthy oil content. You also want to look at your hop storage index, HSI, make sure that falls in the proper range. You'll know your hops maintain their positive qualities better that way. You also want to look at your alpha acid, of course. And then depending on the type of hop, it really comes down to your own sensory, like what are you looking for out of your hop? I know with YCH, we run lot sensory on almost every hop that comes to our farms or comes to our processing facility. And we're able to share that information and really help brewers dial down exactly what they want.
Yeah, I mean, I think, the aroma hops are, obviously it doesn't really narrow it down very much, but, those, in beer, the hops have that function of balancing out the sweetness, and hop water, you don't have the malts, you don't have the yeast, and so, take that into consideration in your hop selection too.
And keep in mind too, single hops are awesome, but if you want a more dynamic based on oil contents too, feel free to do blends. I mean, it makes a more dynamic and unique beverage in the end too.
Another question in the chat is, what sort of dosage rate of hops are acceptable for hop water? A loose range is acceptable. And I think I speak for Joe as well, and not necessarily for Paul, but for Joe and I, we would say that 2 pounds per barrel is probably a great starting point just to get an idea of if hops are going to express themselves correctly and if you're going to get the kind of aroma that you're looking for.
And always feel free to start low and scale up. It is to taste and make sure that it's where you like it as well. I think it may depend as well where you incorporate hops, but yeah, definitely 2 pounds is at least a range, 1 pound even. So.
Another question in the chat is, do you add hops to fermenter or kettle? Again, I don't speak for Paul because their recipe is proprietary, and he doesn't want to give too many specifics. But as a former brewer, I would say that the whirlpool and the fermenter are probably the best possible places to put it. I don't know if necessarily putting it in the kettle and extracting any IBUs would be the right move for hop water, depending if it's back sweetened or not. But I think late whirlpool addition, and then again dry hop, that's a perfect place to do it.
And just keep in mind that you do want your hop or your temperature of water to be above pasteurization. You're kind of leaning it anything north of 165, even 170. I don't necessarily know if you need to have it 212, but I mean, anything that's going to keep the product safe in the end is the key.
What experiments have you tried with boiling versus dry hop flavor additions? I think we kind of just touched on that. I don't necessarily think you need to isomerize your alpha acids to get any bitterness, especially if you're just doing R&D in your own brewery. Here's another question. What is the preferred type of hop addition for hop water? Pellets, extracts, oils, cold side or hot side, or both? Again, this is a perfect time to run your own R&D and see what works best for you. Every brewery is unique. Every beer is unique. So it just comes down to your own process. I would say that pellets are absolutely probably the easiest and most consistent way to add hops. But I've had a hop water with whole leaf that was great. I've had a hop water that had extract in it that was good. So it really just comes down to what you're most comfortable with and what gives you the best flavor.
And always start small too. I mean, if at first you don't succeed, try again. So if you find out that wasn't the method, give it a go. I would not quit on this beverage. I think it is something that it could really be a game changer in the industry.
Agree. Be creative.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's no one recipe out there.
We're getting some fun questions. Would you expect to see isomerization from hops during flash pasteurization? My answer to that would be yes, if you didn't filter it. But if it's fully filtered, then you shouldn't see any issues with pasteurization. Another question is, any preference with using low alpha acids or high alpha acid hops? I would say, again, because you're not isomerizing the oils, that really wouldn't be a huge concern. But again, many breweries can run R&D and maybe they find out something that we haven't seen before and can teach us something, because this is a new frontier, and I think we're all trying to learn a little bit of something from this. Is it the same as making hop tea to get aroma sensory? Is this brewed at a high temp or keep things low? And again, I don't speak for Paul, but I would say that if you're brewing this, you should boil your water, not only to sterilize it, but to deaerate it. And then I would add the hops in the whirlpool again. And then, after you knock out cold into your tank, you can dry hop it as well. Joe, you have anything you want to add to that?
Make sure deaerated water is key, and making sure this liquid is scrubbed with CO2. Anything that is going to help eliminate any growth or microbial growth, and test constantly. And if there is any sense of uncertainty in your process, send it out to a third-party lab if you do not have one in-house. Anything to make sure that this is completely buttoned up is crucial. But other than that, I mean, make it, just like beer, oxygen's the enemy with this. So CO2 is our friend. Use it.
Yeah. One question we get a lot is, how can it be in a green bottle or a clear bottle, and not skunk, right? And that's, if you're a Cicerone, you've been taught that clear and green is you're asking for it, and really the answer on that is this is not beer, and the chemical reaction that creates that skunking involves, of course, the isomerized hops, but also the yeast, and specifically the riboflavin in the yeast. And when you don't have yeast in your product, you don't have the riboflavin, and it's not gonna skunk. So that's something that I know some people have said, oh, how can you? I'm not even going to try it. It's in a green bottle and it has hops, or it's in a clear bottle, like one of our competitors has. So wanted to throw that out there. Little known fact.
Fascinating. I'm learning something new today too.
I was just saying, that's a good point.
Beer, you're always going to have yeast, right? So that's always going to be a concern.
I think that kind of answers another question we had in the chat. If any of you noticed the difference in alpha extraction in water versus wort, I would say that there's definitely going to be a difference. I haven't seen any analytics to see exactly what that difference would be, but I would say, just like Joe is saying, start small, work your way up, keep good notes. That way you can go back and make adjustments. Another question is hop water usually carbonated or are there still versions? What level of carbonation is normal? I would say that carbonation gives you a snap to your drink that's going to really round out the flavors. And if it was me, I would carbonate 2.9 to 3 volumes.
It's also CO2's. I mean, I always look at carbonation as an ingredient as much as it is, a necessity. I think it makes the drink brighter for your own consumption, both in aroma, flavor. It makes it pop in your mouth. I mean, it's absolutely an ingredient. So
totally agree with that. I think, carbonated water, sparkling water is carbonated super high level compared to beer. And, I think you need to experiment, to come up and if you look at, we did a lot of research looking at, anything close to hop water when we're trying to develop this, and there's some references towards hop tea, right? And more or less people just think it's god awful, right? Because it's super bitter. And I think it also lacks that, lacks the CO2 typically, and I think it's been looked at as a way to try to evaluate hops, right? But, when you're looking at, and it's been dismissed as not being actually very effective. And I don't know, it might be interesting to see if hop water becomes a way to, pick your lot, for your hops or evaluate new hops, It'll be interesting to see if that ever comes about, or if if that becomes useful. I'm not sure if, in a beer application, can you look at a controlled hop water and come up with, is this a commercializable, hop variety in your experimentation?
definitely.
I can't tell you how many times I pulled a sample from a tank and didn't like it. And then once it was carbonated, I loved it.
Yeah.
Big difference. Big difference.
Changes.
Yeah.
Another question in the chat is, do you think that Brew Shield or a similar product could be useful? And I can touch on this. In my experience brewing seltzers, we used a product similar to Brew Shield to help keep down micro. Brew Shield is just a low alpha acid product that you can add to help batten down your micro levels. And I think absolutely you can experiment with that. And it might be a great move. I haven't had any experience doing that, but I can't see any fault with it. All right, and our final question is, what botanicals, if any, have you experimented with? Joe, do you remember what that hop water that Brian made for his party was?
Yeah, I felt like he experimented. I mean, this was like on a home scale in a pony keg.
Yeah.
He may have thrown in like a margarita or like a sweet and sour mix or something.
It was
with
a bottle of margarita mix.
That's what it was.
And it was good.
I always thought it'd be kind of cool. I mean, it depends on how crazy your palate is or how far you want to go. I think juniper is really cool and unique. I mean, gentian root is super astringent, bitter, but it's in I think Sue's is the liquor. I mean, I kind of look at gin, and why couldn't you have a hop gin? You can have throw those botanicals that you might in there in your hop water. It makes it just crazy. So
I was just thinking a gin inspired hop water might be really good.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
All right. We had one more question. What kind of dry hopping rates are acceptable? We touched on that a little bit before. Again, Joe and I would say that around 2 pounds per barrel is a great starting point. As a hop company, we love it when you use 6 pounds per barrel. It's not just on flavors but also on your process. The FDA implications of this are big. So having great notes, not only are going to help you make a better product, but also make sure you're within your regulations.
Yep.
Joe, you have anything you'd like to add?
I do not. I think, unless Paul does, but at least in my end, I think, as we said before, the big takeaways is just be really careful. I mean, I know you guys are all brewers, so you have to be as is, but alcohol is now removed. So you have to just monitor it a lot closer. I mean, even as far as if you're kegging it and throw it on a draft line, ensure that those draft lines are really, really clean. That can be a big inhibitor of micro growth. So keep that stuff clean. Any ingredient you add, make sure it is also clean too, because every ingredient you add to a still beverage like water, or not still, but just water with nothing else in it, can also potentially inhibit growth. But bottom line is, we also don't want that to steer anyone away from experimenting, trying it, because I think it is a huge game changer for a brewery to have the ability to offer an NA beverage in general, especially given the data that's coming out with people drinking more NA. I think it could only, blow up from here. So, and Paul helped start that trend. So it's great to see.
Yeah. And I would just echo what John Walker, of Athletic Brewing Company said, that, just read that, before you venture in this. But, we really, really envision that, everywhere that craft beer is sold, hop water should be sold. They're non-alcoholic alternatives that are hoppy. And, that's so important. And, if you're interested in trying ours, you can go to h2ops.com and you can get some samples of what we do, perhaps for inspiration. But, we want this category to flourish. We want it to be done right. And, if there's anything that we can do to help, and, happy to offer guidance as much as I can.
Yep. And that goes for Joe and I as well. If you have any questions on process or hop or anything to do with hops, please reach out to us directly by email. You can also reach us at the Yakima Chief Brew School, Yakima Chief Hops Brew School at yakimachief.com, or brewing help at yakimachief.com. And if you would like to try any of the CBD samples, please reach out to hemp at yakimachief.com. And we're here to help. So, and Paul, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate you. We know you're very busy, and this was a lot of fun for Joe and I, and we appreciate it.
Appreciate the invitation. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers, guys.
Thank you.